That is extremely active and lively music, Vince. I'm
I
about
like
to fall asleep over here. Hey, Rise Up Nation. I know you didn't pick the music. I know we got to be careful what we cheat. You can't put music that's really good. We could not put the band that you just heard
We could
a couple
not.
of days ago on there. Welcome back, Rise Up Nation. We're glad that you're here. We have got a special guest on the show today, and I loved what he just said a few minutes ago. He goes, "Why am I here?" And I said, "Well, we're here because we're going to get to know you a little bit better." And he goes, "Well, I'm here because I just am trying to say yes more and no less." I mean, what a great lesson to start the day off with, right? Some of us probably need to say no more and yes less. But Chris, nice to have you on the show this morning. I'm going to do an introduction for you in a minute, but I'm going to tell our guests what we're here to do. We got some people already logged on live, and looking at this, we're going to be 45 minutes worth of conversation with Chris. Vince and I are just going to throw him some questions. You guys throw him some questions. We're going to take this episode and edit it for next week. The whole purpose of this show is to find extra in the ordinary. Like Chris, ordinary guy. Tad, ordinary guy. Vince, ordinary guy. But there's something extra about each of us. My wife would say there's a lot of things
There's
extra.
a lot of extra. Yeah, there's a lot of extra between you and I.
What is it about us that makes us special? Why are we here on the planet? Let's just dig a little bit and try to find that for Chris. And next week, we'll edit this, and this will be the episode that shows on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeart, all that stuff next Monday. Like today, right now, you could go to Spotify, Rise Up in Real Estate, and you could watch Tyler Morton's replay episode on AI. AI is a hot topic today, Chris. We're going to be talking at 11:15 about some stuff. We're in coastal South Carolina, North Carolina. Chris is coming to us from Somerville, right, Chris?
Correct. Yeah, I'm a Somerville boy. Pretty much lived here almost my entire life.
We're going to find out about that in a minute. Vince, you tell me. I texted you the other day. You said, "I'm out of town." I said, "Where in the world are you?" Tell me where you went on Friday and what you did.
We did a little road trip to Atlanta. We left 9 a.m. on Friday morning. One of my favorite bands of all time was playing in, it's called the Tabernacle. It's this huge old church that they've turned into this rock venue, and it's incredible. Like a step back in time. And then we literally just went for the show. We had a meal. We watched the band, and then we woke up on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. and drove back. So that's about 5.5 hours. Don't recommend one night for 10 hours of driving. But we did stop at Buc-ee's both ways, and I had my Texas cheesesteak burrito. So all was well in the world.
Nice. Hey, Chris, have you ever been to Buc-ee's before?
Yeah, I've been to Buc-ee's a few times.
Hey,
it's always an interesting experience when you go there.
Mm-hmm.
You know the one you talking about, the one in Florence, right?
Yeah,
Florence. You
went
went to that one?
And one in Florence, and one I think it's down in Daytona too. I think the first one I ever went to was out there somewhere around Daytona.
The marketing, Buc-ee's marketing is fantastic. I saw a billboard. We're 200 miles from the next Buc-ee's, and the sign says 199 miles. You can hold it.
My daughter took to Buc-ee's last summer with one of her friends and a lady from church just to go up to Florence to go to Buc-ee's.
Yeah, day trip.
Buc-ee, like a little onesie type thing with the hood on it. And I was like, all right, you're 16 and that's what you want to do for excitement. Knock yourself out. So.
Yeah. They would be like the Savannah Bananas of gas stations.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, there are worse things to do than take a field trip for a 16-year-old to Buc-ee's. I can promise you that.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of the Savannah Bananas, they played in Clemson this weekend at the Clemson Stadium. Funny enough, I went to the Pelicans game. Myrtle Beach Pelicans played Friday night, and there were 10 of us. I took all the kids, some friends. It was fun. We sat right behind home plate. I walked around with my 2-year-old the entire night, but I wore my Savannah Bananas jersey. And my hat, and I ran into a dude at the snack bar, and he came over to me. He goes, "Listen, I just want to thank you for what you're doing on that baseball field. You guys are so entertaining." He thought I was a player because it's a jersey, like the button. It has a number on the back, my name, not my name, but it has a number on the back. He thought I was a player, and I go, "Dude, you don't need to drink any more beer." He totally thought I was part of the Savannah Bananas, but
yeah, you could get out there and throw a little.
Oh yeah. Yeah, as long as it doesn't have to be running. I probably have to be catcher because my knee is I banged up my knee somehow, so I'm gimping around. But Chris, thanks for agreeing to be on the show. Let's talk a little bit about you. I know you've got some people out there that are going to throw some questions at you, but tell me, you were born right there in Somerville.
Yeah, actually, I was born in Marion, South Carolina, and so up closer your way right there. My mom's from Loris, and my dad's from a little town called Mullins, and so I was born a PD kid, but pretty much moved here when I was in middle school and went to high school here, and been here ever since. Except for job taking me here there a little bit, but yeah, I'm pretty much a Somerville boy. Graduated from Somerville High School, all that.
And at this point, you're living there. You're a real estate agent, doing your business. Are you married? Have kids? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, my wife Amanda and I actually met our senior year in high school. I sat behind her and kind of flirted with her and conned her into going on a date with me. And 5 years later, we got married. We went to 2 different colleges, and which might have been the perfect way to date during college. And she's an elementary school teacher and taught right here in the Somerville area pretty much our entire career. And then I have 2 kids. My oldest is Rhett. And Rhett is now 24. He's in his last week of actual law school, and he takes the bar here in July. And he's at Charleston Law. And then I have a daughter who's a junior in high school, Neely, and she's the little business entrepreneur of the family. She's running her own little bakery out of the house and that kind of stuff. And so we got 7 years between our kids, and so it's been kind of a neat experience because you kind of get to go through each phase separately again a little bit. And one thing I do remember is that when my daughter was born, I remember thinking it was a whole lot harder the second go around than it was the first time, just because of 7 years of age. I felt it a little bit more.
You're speaking my language, Chris.
Yeah, you're living dangerously. I could not handle a toddler now.
Well, tell me where you got. So his name is Rhett.
Correct.
And her name, did you say Neely?
Neely. Yep.
Where do those names come from?
Well, in our family, my son's first name is actually William, which is also my first name, which is also my dad's first name. And then the curse of all the firstborn sons is that we never go by our first name. We all go by our middle name. And so that just makes life fun as you go through everything in life. When, it does help you when you get junk email. If they call you William, right off the bat, they don't know you. But so that's kind of how we came up with his name, William. And then my wife wanted Garrett, and that's actually his middle name, but I just called him Rhett, and he's just kind of stuck with it ever since. And Neely, I don't know. As a teacher, it's kind of hard to name kids, because if you throw a name out there, it's usually reminds you of somebody. So your list is very, very small. It's kind of a unique name by the time she came around.
Yeah, and you've mentioned education, I think 3 times already. We're 8 minutes in, and I've talked for 7 of them. So education is a big part of who you are, and that's part of what we want to talk about for the show. Did you say your parents were both educators too?
No, I'm the actual person. I was the only person in my family not in sales. My mom owned a real estate company, Berkshire Hathaway, here in the Somerville area. My brother, of course, has been in real estate since he got out of school. My dad sold heavy construction equipment for a company called Link Belt, and he actually was over the entire Western Hemisphere at one point. Wow. And I was the one guy that wasn't in sales because, honestly, I can't sell anything. When I was, a little kid going around selling the chocolate bars that we had to do for PTA, I would always sell one to my parents and then one to some random person who felt bad for me, and that was it. I'm just a horrible salesperson. And so I was actually in education. I was a football coach, soccer coach, track coach, athletic director, and a history teacher for 28 years. And so that's really kind of what my career was. And then about 2019, mom was needing some help with some stuff, and so I'd always kind of done behind the scenes things with the office, helping mom and Carrie. And, they were like, might as well go ahead and get your license because you're kind of helping with some stuff anyway. So I did, and really started actually doing real estate in 2020. And it's been a great career change for me because it's a lot like teaching and coaching. You're working with people, trying to educate them on the process a little bit and then coach them through that process. And so that's why it kind of was a natural fit for me. Like I said, I don't sell. I just try to help people. And so I really found a lot of joy in it.
Yeah, tons of questions. Hey, Belle, glad that you're here. I know she's got it up on the in North Charleston, probably up on the conference room. I appreciate you being. Oh, look at there. Vel says Chris is outstanding realtor. So appreciate that. Listen, Vel knows, she's been around a little bit, so she knows her stuff. Okay, so I must have misunderstood something you said, Chris, because when you were mentioning your mom and dad, I thought you said you were from a gym family, like they were in PE maybe, or a PE family. I thought you said
PD.
Gotcha. Okay. I was like, I missed something. I don't usually miss things. Okay, PD.
Yeah. PD. Yeah, so I like the vinegar-based barbecue, all that, So
now you're talking my language.
River hash, so yeah, I'm a PD guy in the Low Country. It's kind of a strange mix, but that's it's kind of how my family's come together.
That's the way it is.
I always like to think that educators make really outstanding realtors. Why do you think that is, Chris? And that's something I think, but Tad, would you agree that's kind of proven?
Yeah.
We know that does this. Why does that work so well, Chris?
Well, I think part of, especially in the coaching realm of what I did, is that you always have a process for what you're going to do. You always have a schedule. And, so I'm really big into written plans and having everything kind of mapped out. And, in the coaching and teaching, line of work, you can't really force somebody to do anything. You kind of have to just kind of help guide them through the process. And they still have to make their decisions, which is a lot like, there's real estate. I always tell my people that, you make the decisions. I just handle the process for you. And so it's very closely related.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, I love that. Man, there's so much in there. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Tell me, though, I want to ask you about your coaching and teaching. What did you teach?
I taught history primarily, anything social studies. I taught history, government, econ, all that kind of stuff. Coaches like to talk, I guess. So we like to stand up there and tell stories. And, when I first started teaching history, I used to call it Collins' Tour of Death and Destruction. We were in wars all the time. And then as the curriculum changed, they focused a lot less on wars and more about, excise taxes and tariffs. And that got kind of boring. So I moved over to econ because kids always like to learn about money. So, so that's kind of what I did there.
Interesting that you sat everything. I can tell already in 10 minutes in that everything you do is with purpose. And I like that. Like you even chose the classes that you were teaching on purpose. I see some helmets behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in your office?
Yeah, I'm in my office at home. And
those helmets. What do you got back there? Is that Furman? You got Furman up there?
No, that's Wando High School.
Wando High School. Okay.
Yeah. Every helmet up there is a school that I coached at, or I played. The Summerville helmet, obviously, I played for them. But everything else, I think there's 8 back there. I actually coached at 9 schools, and the school owes me a helmet, and my buddies forgot to give it to me, so I got to go get it. But I've never been a big trophy guy, awards guy. In my coaching career, we won a state championship, and so I got a picture of that team back there. And, you get a ring, and it's really cool for a year, and then somebody else wins a state championship. You're not a champ anymore. You take the ring, you throw it in the jewelry box. You only pull it out for job interviews to impress somebody. But, to me, the helmets are much more important because the helmets represent those teams, those kids. And in my coaching career, I have a lot more memories about players, specific people, than I do about any kind of game or anything like that went on. So, to me, that's more important is those teams and those kids that they represent. So, what you see back there behind me, you don't really see a whole lot of trophies. There's one where the school I coached at had not won a game in 3 or 4 years, and we won a game on TV, the first game they'd won since Moses was a baby. And so we got that trophy, and I kept that, not because, it's a big deal about winning that game, but, I had kids that were crying after that game and hugging and thanking us and, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's just kind of a special memory because there were seniors on that team that had played for 4 years and had never won a game. And to me, just a kid that would continue to show up and do all the work and all that kind of stuff and never, ever win and then still keep coming, to me just means something special. And so that's one that I kept. And there's another football up there the team I coached, they had the best season they'd ever had, and they all signed the football and gave it to me at the end of that year. And so those are like my only real trophies that I keep. And it's much more about the kids and the helmets and than anything else.
And you were a football coach. Was that the only sport you coached?
I coached football primarily. I was also a track coach. I was a soccer coach, and I was a very, very marginal assistant wrestling coach. I didn't really know anything about wrestling. My job was to drive the bus and take care of the paperwork. And the wrestling coach basically helped me coach soccer, and he did that for me in soccer. So
that's cool. And I'm going to ask you the obvious question. Why do you have 9 helmets instead of 1? Like, what did you switch schools a bunch, or did you get fired a lot? I mean, what happened?
Well, first of all, as a coach, you're going to get fired. But honestly, when I started off my career, I was very goal oriented, and those goals are, in your 20s and 30s, they're not really the important goals. It was about, I wanted to have, these kind of stats, this kind of record. And then when I go from here, then I will take the next step up the ladder. So it was, I was a position coach at this school, then I was a coordinator at this school, then I was a head coach at this school. And so it was always about, you're kind of climbing a little bit. And then my last couple of jobs, it was about, I was actually working for people that asked me to come and coach for them that I had coached with or had actually coached for me at some point and had been my assistant. And so as I was kind of winding my career down, I started helping out, people that had helped me on my way up.
Interesting. I want to say hey to Brad. Brad from Omaha is on here. Brad, good to see you, man. Every time I run into you at a conference, you're like, hey, you're so plugged in. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're here on the show. And then I want to see what your brother had to say here. This is Chris's brother. Chris is extremely organized. When you couple that with his genuine care for his clients, it makes him an awesome and caring agent. How much do you give him before the show, Chris?
Yeah, I owe Carrie lunch now. So
yeah, let's go ahead, man.
I want to hear about this plan. So we've got, other realtors that are watching, right? Like there's a system and a process that I think you probably have dialed in and that you're following. So is it, when he references your plans, is he talking about like a financial plan, a sales plan with a buyer, seller? What's he referencing?
Basically, I plan out every step of the process. And I know they kind of laugh at me when I come in the office because I will come in and I will just print off these books. Like, me and Erica are always messing up the printer because she's running off her labels and I'm printing out my books. And I have a booklet for every single step, from how to read an Alta statement to, buyer forms. So everything's explained for them. And so I have literally every single step of the way. I have a book for them that we go through together. It even has vocabulary terms on it because the former teacher in me kicks in, because most people don't want to tell you that, I don't really know what escrow is. They don't want to admit it, So, I give them those basic terms and tell them that, it's okay not to know. You don't sell a house every day. And so, don't feel dumb for not knowing these things. And so, so that's part of that process. I am very regimented as far as I have my schedule every day of what I'm going to do. It's always a written schedule of what I'm going to do that day and how I'm going to block things off. And that's just the old coach in me where, we plan a 2.5-minute water break that's going to have a timer on it. And, and so, you're always trying to maximize your time.
When you were coaching, did you think in the future you were going to be a realtor, or did that just happen because your mom needed some help?
Yeah, absolutely not. I used to tell them, all the time, I would not do that job ever. And so it's kind of funny, but Carrie has really been, I'm real big into peer review type stuff. So whenever I'm doing something that I think it could be a little bit sticky, or maybe is something I haven't quite ever dealt with before, because each transaction is a little bit unique. Carrie's going to get a call from me right off the jump, and I have him look at it. And, he's been really good for me as far as, and the thing is, I don't mind calling Carrie at 10 o'clock at night and saying, hey man, wake up. I got to talk to you, and so, he's been great for me as far as being that guy that I can lean on and kind of walk me through things. And he knows my quirks a little bit too. He knows that, hey, you're going to write too much right here, because when my first contract I ever wrote, I think I put everything possible in that contract. And of course, underwriting was like, you're killing us here, So, so he's been really good about being that peer review guy that helps me.
What was it like getting for a guy like you that was hands-on coaching? Like I can hear when you're describing it, it was by design, not by accident. That's what Vince was getting at, I think. What was it like getting into real estate when COVID started? Like you went, yeah, and you really couldn't see people for a minute. Like you're a hands-on personal guy. What was that like for you trying to get started in that market?
Yeah, that was, the good thing about it is that I really hadn't had a lot of experience with it before. So it didn't seem all that weird to me. And it gave me a chance as a person who was new to kind of get all of my systems and processes kind of in place. So that way, when it was go time, I can really reach in, grab my stuff and go. And so that's what I used that time for a lot, was actually kind of getting ready to be ready, if that makes sense.
Right. Vince, does this make you want to, how many teachers have you thought of in your mind that are very good agents and coaches? Is this a big part of your recruiting thoughts? Like, I know you're our bouncer, but you're the culture protector. What
we've got red flags and green flags and yellow flags, and hearing someone was an educator is always a green flag in the interview, or the recruiting room, as I call it. Kekila Robinson, Erica Atkins. I could go on with educators who make awesome agents. And it's because you said it. The very first thing you said is, I can't sell anything. And then we have people chiming in that know you in the industry going, he's a great realtor. Right. So it comes down to intent with communication, and your objective is to help the person. Me and Tad have said this for years. You just go in to help the person and everything works itself out. You aren't thinking any other way but that. You didn't start in sales looking for, an objection overcome to close a deal. You're just walking in and helping them like you help your students, and then when you add the processes and systems that teachers are required to know to survive, it's a great combination. It's a great combination for a second career. It just works.
Yeah. Let's talk a little. I don't know if it works because of that or because you're used to dealing with elementary and high school aged kids, and that's how clients are. That's how clients think.
You gotta break it down. You gotta explain things. You have to educate.
Educate. He said educate in the first minute.
Yeah, realtors are educators. Part of our job is to protect the public. Part of your job as a teacher is to educate and protect the public. But educating them with the books that you're showing and you're going through with them. And you're teaching. You're still teaching. And you probably have a lot less surprises throughout the process than some agents out there. Well, what's this mean? I didn't know this was coming. You've probably already gotten ahead of all that, and your clients probably have very little surprise moments, I imagine.
Yeah, and of course, you pick things up as you work different deals and that kind of stuff. So you're constantly modifying a little bit of what you got. I had to have a conversation with somebody today. Well, not today, but earlier this week. That the decline button on showing time doesn't mean we're declining because I don't feel like leaving my house today. It's we got to have a real reason for a decline, and so I've had to kind of tweak that a little bit, because as you work with different people, you learn different quirks, I guess you could say, about people, and just like I had to now add to part of my listing deal when I talk to somebody is that if water is coming down through the ceiling, it's okay to make a call. Let's get that fixed before I show up. I had a young man that I'd worked with that I'm about to put his condo on, and upstairs the water heater had sprung a leak, and the water was actually coming down through the light, and he just put a bucket under it and waited a couple of days because he said, I knew you were coming on Monday and we just talk about it then. I was like, no, let's don't wait on me to show up for that. You call me if you need me to. But yeah, I was like, I appreciate your trust, but at this point, when water's coming through lights, let's deal with it. So,
I mean, if somebody's not going to fix a leak because they're waiting on Chris has earned some trust.
Yeah.
I felt really bad.
Yeah, I bet. Tell me how, this is an interesting conversation that we have quite often. And for a guy like you, when you come from a highly organized career to a highly unorganized career, and actually a career people choose because it is freedom of choice. You make your own schedule. There's no rules. Like, I'm not going to tell you 9 to 5, but in school the county tells you what day you got to come to work and how long you got to work and when you get off for the summer and how many hours you can coach kids, when you can start coaching kids, what you can say a lot of times, a curriculum. Was that hard? Was that a hard adjustment for you or not?
Well, the biggest adjustment for me, and I talked to my brother about this several times, is that realtor hours are a lot different than what I'm used to, as far as the day gets started a lot later in real estate than what I'm used to. I'm a guy who still gets up every morning at 6:15 because that's when my wife is going to school and I always want to see her leave. And so, by 10 o'clock, a lot of times I already have a lot of things I'm wanting to get done and I'm waiting to hear from somebody else. And, they're not even moving yet. And, so that was something I still kind of have to just say, all right, I'm going to work on my business until about lunchtime. And then I can actually communicate with a lot of other people after lunchtime. And so that was something that's a little bit different for me because, the hours in real estate really aren't, when people talk about it's late night and it's weekend stuff. Well, in coaching, that's what it always was. I would typically come home from coaching and I would eat dinner in my office watching practice film and go to bed, around 11:30, midnight, be up at 6, and away we go again. And then on the weekend, very typical in football to have a 12-hour Sunday and a 6-hour Saturday just doing work. And so that wasn't really a big change for me. But I do love the fact that I now don't have a bell tell me when I can eat lunch or a bell tell me when I can go to the bathroom. So there is a lot of freedom in this job. And I could see how for a lot of people that freedom can be a problem because, like for me, if I work a lot on a weekend, then maybe Tuesday's kind of like my Saturday, kind of like my day to cut grass or whatever. And it can be real easy to go, well, Tuesday was great, but I didn't get everything done. So now I'm going to slide it into Wednesday. And next thing you know, it's, your week kind of disappears. So it does take discipline. And that's why, I'm real big into having my calendar checklist of exactly what I need to get done that day, because just the way my brain is set is I cannot function if I have not checked off everything on my list for the day. I can't go to bed.
That's interesting. And that's what I find about teachers is you can't get behind. No. You have a curriculum and you can't miss a day. You can't forget something on the list because you get behind, and standardized testing drives you towards a certain standard. So all of that, but I bet that's been part of the reason you've been successful is bringing those habits, whether you were that person when you started teaching or you learned over time to be that person. I want to ask you, this is personal, but I wanted to ask you, because when you said, I was thinking it, when you said, how in the world, how do you keep a marriage and a family going? You were at work all the time, Chris. Does your wife always at work too? I mean, tell me how that worked.
It was tough when our kids were very little. I used to always say that I call it the week 5 meltdown. My wife, every season when my son was, between the ages of, 0 and 4, week 5, we would always have some kind of fight. And what that was that basically you had 4 weeks of preseason, then you had, we're in week 5 of the season. So for 9 weeks now, I've basically been around for about a half a day during the week. And during that time period, the school I was working at was over in Mount Pleasant, lived here in Somerville. So you had to run that traffic gauntlet. And I would typically leave for school before my son got up. and I typically got home after he went to bed. And that was really kind of a driving force for me to move on to a different place after a few years. And so, she had to kind of learn how to run things without me a lot. I put a lot on her, but she also loved being a coach's wife. She loved being involved in things. And, so she helped me in a lot of ways. She did a lot of things like, help at the concession stand and, do all these, have players over. We'd always have players over for meals and stuff like that. And so she was part of the team. And, now with real estate, she understands when I'm going to be out and that kind of stuff, but also I have more flexibility to be home and to be around. And, I kind of schedule things a little better because, if I'm going to have a real late night, well, maybe I don't start quite as early or something like that,
Is she still teaching?
She is still teaching, and she's an outstanding teacher, and she loves it. And she's been pretty much about the same. She's been about 2 or 3 schools about the whole time, and she's just excellent at it.
Has she said to you yet, "Why are you home so much, Chris?"
It is funny because she's kind of gotten used to, sometimes I beat her home, and whereas in the coaching life that I had, that never happened, and so she does enjoy that.
So this is like a honeymoon and retirement for you. Like you got everything going, because now I have so much respect for that. That you kept that marriage. I know there was bumps and bruises. We all have those, but you kept the marriage and you seem to have a good relationship with your kids in the midst of all of that. It's a lesson for all of us. And you did something you loved. And I'm proud of you for making the switch. I think it's not an easy thing to do at our age. You're younger than me, but when you make a switch like what you did, you're clearly a humble guy. You're teachable, like learning based. Because Vince, how many times has he said in the call, like, I needed to add this, or I needed to do this because I learned this? And I guess as a coach, that's just part of your nature.
Yeah, you're calling Carrie to run scenarios. You're clearly coachable, which is so cool because you were a head coach and all kinds of coaches. Did you catch the discipline in wanting to wake up every morning to make sure that you still get to see your wife off to work? I'm guilty of not doing that, and now I'm sitting here thinking, like, why not? That's such a great way to live, and it's discipline, and then you're up at that point, so you might as well go to work, and that's another thing with the educators. You were required to be there, so you're requiring of yourself to be up at that time and to go to work. Tad and I, we know you've seen it, Chris, there's lots of agents who don't believe you have to get up and go to work. And those agents just simply don't produce, sales. So at the baseline of all this, it's showing up. it's the first step, but you clearly get that, pretty naturally.
Yeah. Talk to me, Chris, about the financial adjustments that you and your wife have had to make, your families had to make, going from what was a steady income that you've always made, whether it was what you should. I've always found that teachers, coaches they're like nurses. They don't get paid what they should. You probably made a modest living, a comfortable living, but you had 24 or 6 years of getting used to what your income was going to be like. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how your pension works for a teacher, but all of a sudden you have no income, right? Or less income. And now you're building it back in real estate. How has that financial transition happened for you and your wife, if you don't mind talking about it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, one of the great benefits about, teaching or working for the government was that, you were definitely getting a paycheck, and we had a little bit of a time back in 2008 when everybody was kind of taking hits where they were doing the furloughs and that kind of stuff. But just like during COVID, I was getting a check, I wasn't worried about PPP loans, any of that kind of stuff. I was getting a check. And so really, I kind of had a bit of a step up on a lot of people in real estate business because I was getting my check and I was teaching my little online class a little bit. But to be real, during that time period, there wasn't a whole lot going on. It's like, hey, guys, here's a little bit of work and, try not to get sick. And so that was kind of nice. I have definitely learned the difference in the tax code for 1099 employees, and took a couple beatings on that one. But what I have done is I set myself up where I pay myself a paycheck. I get my retirement check first of the month from the state, which is basically just like you get paid half of what you were making, and so count that as your first paycheck. And so then my second paycheck on the 15th always comes out of my real estate account where I pay myself. And so I try not to ride the roller coaster of, I got this and I don't have that. And one thing I'm adamant about, and I think COVID had a big effect on this, is that I'm really adamant about having a certain amount in savings. So I'm not waking up absolutely terrified of how am I paying bills this month. So I like to have, between 3 to 6 months in savings of my paycheck, and not just paycheck, but your expenses, that kind of stuff. So that way I'm not having to sell. I can help, and because like I said, as soon as I get in sales mode, it's awful. It's just not good when I'm trying to sell, but when I'm trying to help people, I have a lot more success. And so I take that pressure off myself by banking that and then paying myself a salary.
So all your commission checks go into an account.
Correct.
And then I'm sure taxes come out of that account, and you pay yourself
monthly draw.
A monthly draw, kind of. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what I do.
And how many times in your 4-year, I guess really, let's just say 4 years of doing real estate, have you been in selling mode where you felt like I better make a few things happen?
I got in a little bit early just because it wasn't because of money. It was because I was trying to achieve these goals.
Yeah.
And I am goal based. I mean, that is true. I mean, I think everybody kind of has to be goal based a little bit, but I found myself in that mode a couple of years ago, just because I was trying to reach an arbitrary level, what it was called, gold level. I don't remember what it was called, but I just wanted to be that, and that was it. And that's when I caught myself doing that, and I immediately did not get anything done when I was in that sale mode. When I backed off of that and said, why am I worried about that? I'm already, I was still working full time as a teacher anyway at the time. And, I made a good GCI. In fact, the company embarrassed me because they gave me an award for GCI, which I find to be a little bit embarrassing. I'd rather see how many people I helped than how much money I made off of it. And once I got off of that, I've been just focused on, taking care of my people and making sure that I have a steady plan going.
If we were to set a goal for 2026, how do you go about defining your goal?
Basically, I kind of feel like for myself that, because I don't run a team, and I really kind of get in the weeds of everything a little bit, as far as like, I take them through the entire process. I'm the one making the calls. So I feel like I can really service, like 3 full-time clients at a time is what I feel like. And, once I get more than that, it starts to get a little bit, I may not quite have everything kind of dialed in. So that's what I do. Like this year for me, it's been, 20 sides is my goal this year. And, if I go over that, I'm not going to be upset about it. If I'm a little bit under it, I'm not going to be that upset about it. But, that's kind of where I'm trying to see, can I function my business at 20 sides where I'm involved in everything? And then if I want to go past that and I feel a little bit better, then I may get someone to assist me with some of the stuff. But I still, as a coach, it's hard for me to sometimes give things up a little bit.
Sure. What I'm hearing is your goals are based on the level of service you're comfortable providing to keep excellence, not how much cash you want to pull in or GCI. I don't think anyone's ever answered that question that way, which is pretty. I ask that question a lot, but to hear it based solely on how much service you can provide to give the experience you want, you're going to have a lot of repeat referral business in the next several years.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's and that's something that that's really what I strive for is a lot of repeat business. So like, every one of my past clients hears from me every month, just me checking in, because, when you asked what my superpower was, Tad, I was like, I don't know. I don't have any, but yeah, I guess mine's kind of the power of connection because I have a large sphere of people that I know. And, in this community, but also in the coaching world and teaching world and former students too, to where, I had a guy one time say, hey, my dad's, really having a hard time. He's got Alzheimer's. We're probably going to have to move him out of the house. Well, I was able to connect him with, a group of people that actually had homes for, Alzheimer's patients for families and things like that. And so I can just kind of help with, daycare stuff and that kind of stuff. I just try to help people out. And then they refer me business because they're like, he's the guy that knows everybody. So that's kind of my superpower, I guess, is that I have the power of connection here in this area.
And Vince, we're learning something too. I mean, you're talking to a guy who he doesn't look like he's got 25. He's retired from a career, right? But he's retired from a career where he made what he wanted. Like he was living how he wanted to. And like a lot of people that we interview, they're getting in this business because they see the dollar signs, they see the cars that people drive, or they watch HGTV and they get this. We talk about more versus better, right? He's kind of understood. He's living better already. So his idea, I mean, he said so many fascinating things in the awards, like shame on RE/MAX for creating executive 100% platinum, because it's probably driving people to get an award that means nothing financially to them, rather than teaching them how to understand how to be okay with better, right? And I loved too, Chris, it was interesting the whole time we've been on this thing. You've been back in your chair like this, and I love that. Like you're just laid back and easy to talk to. But when he said if I get to where I have to sell, did you see him lean forward instead of help people, then I know I'm doing the wrong thing. Like that's what he's passionate about. You can just see it in your body language, and I think it's really cool. I think there's so much gold here. I mean, let me get to this question right here, though. I don't want to miss it. Margaret has a question for you, Chris. What would you advise a new agent to do to get their business started after they complete all the training, videos, etc., through RE/MAX? Margaret, great question. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah,
I mean, the other day, Margaret, that was the first hug you give me, and I appreciate that very much.
When I first got started, the way that my business actually began was I was helping people who already trusted me. And so I focused on my tight sphere, the people that you say they're the people who are kind of like your cheerleaders a little bit. And I focused on seeing what I could do to help them. I showed a lot of rentals early on, did a lot of open houses. Open houses have always been good to me. And I think it's because I'm not in sales, I'm just there to kind of help them through the process. And, and so that's really what I did was I did open houses. I helped out with rentals. And then when I got my first listing, I treated it like I was listing my own house. I went out there and did the landscaping. We redid the landscaping. We redid the floors, and I was there with them, really doing it all, helping them, literally digging holes in the dirt and planting plants and stuff, because this was somebody that was trusting me to help them. And I wanted to show them that I was going to do whatever that I could to help them sell their home.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Open houses have always been good to me. This is all, Tad, we preach this all the time. If you're watching this and you go into an open house with the intention to get a buyer agency sign from a buyer that walks in, you're already doing it wrong. Because I'm not doing that with anybody I don't know, like, and trust already. So you're just building a relationship and getting to know the person, and then they like you, and then they therefore trust you. Now the business comes. That's why open houses have been good for you, because you don't have commission breath. Right?
Yeah. Very true. I had one open house I did last year. It was for another agent, wasn't my listing. And she didn't want to go do it. I went out and did it. One couple showed up, and that it was kind of at the end of open house. And I was kind of like, well, I wasted a day here. This one couple showed up, and we got to talking. And I always have, like, at open house, I'll have like 3 or 4 other, MLS sheets for other houses that are similar, and kind of help them get that. Well, ended up helping them buy a house in a totally different part of town. They bought a house. Then they turned around with me as their buying agent. Then they turned around 6 months later, bought an investment property with me as their buying agent. And they've referred me to 2 other clients that are now going to be buyers for me. And they're buying another investment property. So this one open house is, giving me like five deals out of one open house. And, that's why I always love them. I've sold the house actually at open house before, but once again, it's not because I'm good at sales. It's just because they're trying to help them out and, just being friendly and talking more about the community and the area and the schools and that kind of stuff. And so, like I said, I always like open houses.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let me see. Look at these comments. That's what I tell them to start with. Open houses. Good job, Margaret. Good job, Vel. I tell all of our new hires they need to get with Chris on his open house checklist and plan. He's actually taught a classroom on the subject in the past. So here's that story you told that led to 5 transactions about you didn't sell the house you were sitting in. That wasn't even part of the conversation, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Just like that happened to be your office for the day.
Exactly.
You used it the right way. I mean, why not? I can tell just by listening to you. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, I'm not that person that's going to go out and just, look for business. That's something. It's just my nature. I'm a little bit more introverted. But at an open house, it's very easy for me to meet people and talk to them and learn about what they're looking for, and to help them that way. And and Carrie's right. I do have a checklist. I have a plan of exactly what I'm going to have. And I have it in a sheet protector from my coaching days, where I already have everything pre-packed the night before, ready to go for the open house.
We may need that teacher hat put back on for a day and have a little class that we can record and reference back and provide to our new agents.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I can tell. Like, it's interesting. Where do you get your business from? Your sphere?
Yeah, absolutely. Sphere past clients. When I first started, you talk about the scarcity mentality. I was like, well, I don't really know anybody. Everybody I ever dealt with was a high school kid or a coach. That was kind of what I was thinking. Then I realized, I taught, if you got 30 kids a class, you teach 3 classes a semester, that's 90. And then you teach 2 semesters, that's 180. Then you go that by 28. All of a sudden, that's a lot of people.
Right.
And, plus teachers and coaches and administrators and all that kind of stuff. And I just realized that I knew a lot of people and people that already knew me outside of trying to sell something, and so that was really kind of a big thing. We don't realize how big our sphere really is until you kind of sit down and say, all right, this aspect of my life, who do I know? This aspect. And that's really what I did, was I kind of broke it down and said, all right, who do I know from church? Well, every church has 25 realtors in it. And I don't want to be the guy in Sunday school that's, going, hey, you want to sell your house? I heard your mom's dying, or something like that. Maybe sell mom's house. You don't want to do that. So, I try to focus outside of that area a little bit and just focus on where I've run into people in the past and dealt with people.
Here's the lesson. Here's the lesson that I love in this. So we talk about let me hide this. It's a great comment, but let me hide it. Know, like, and trust. People, every once in a while, I'm telling my son this because he just started real estate. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody like he had this weekend that buys from you before they really know, like, and trust you. Every once in a while, you have a buyer that will stumble up and do it. I don't think ever you'll get a listing in that regard. Like, I think listing, you almost have to have the know, like, and trust. Buyers, most of the time, you have to have know, like, and trust. Here's the interesting thing that I want everybody to catch. Chris and all of us, our sphere, if we pay attention, our sphere and the people that we've come in contact with, like Chris just said, high school kid that was 15 years ago. Now that person might be buying a house. They know Chris, like Chris, and trust Chris, not even knowing he's a real estate salesperson. They built all of that before he even added that hat as part of what he does. So he, without even paying attention, was building relationships with people to the trust level. And now he puts on the realtor hat. Voila! Now you're everybody's advisor. You're everybody's helper. What we get backwards is we put the realtor hat on before we know, like, and trust somebody. Before they know, like, and trust us, right? We put that realtor hat in and we run in guns a-blazing, and they can't be logicked into something or talked into it or sold in most cases. Every once in a while I get the outlier, but take the lesson from Chris here. Even if you have your realtor license and you're brand new at it, find the people that already know, like, and trust you, or start building relationships in that way before you put your realtor hat on.
Yep. That's
Find
what
groups to be a part of. Go ahead.
People are going to go, oh, I don't have that depth of a sphere that Chris has. Okay, well, why not at least start the relationships today with that mentality?
Yeah. I mean, get in a social media group, or go to your church, go to the, I don't know, our buddy hands out pumpkin pies at a convenience store. Just do something where you get to go to open houses and just be an advisor. Pretend you don't even have a real estate license. Just being like, answer questions about the house and ask questions about the people. I know Chris has these questions. I bet if I went and listened to him, he probably has a series of questions that he asks people and he gathers information. When you put the realtor hat on, it's going to make them go. It's going to make them scatter, especially in our world where trust is a big deal. Trust is a huge deal. That was a lot. A light just went off for me. I appreciate that, Chris. That was good.
And this does parallel well, because I, Tad, you know this, have the ability to connect with people like you, Chris, and it accidentally ends up generating listings that I need to refer. And we're pretty open about the fact that we don't compete, we don't sell on staff, and it still happens. And I'm not tooting my horn here. I'm just saying proof is in the pudding. You have people going out after listings and selling, and they're like, I can't seem to catch a listing. Well, for guys like you, they're probably falling in your lap a bit because you've built it that way.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. We're proving it works.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I said, I really just try to help people, and that's what my focus is, and not trying to say, hey, I got to, my goal is to get, 7 this quarter, and I got to go round up 3 this week. That's not how I work. It's just, I try to, as they talk about in Ninja, you listen for change a little bit. So, if I know someone's having a baby or something like that, then I'm going to make sure they get a little extra attention, because they're probably going to be making a change. And one thing I did have to learn in this line of work is that when somebody doesn't choose you, they went with somebody, you can't get your feelings hurt about it. It's not a personal thing. That was kind of probably the one thing I had to learn right off the jump, was that, maybe cousin Bob is, a realtor or whatever. We don't know why they do what they do, but you still love on them, and you still take care of them, and you still be that source of help for them, because later on they may choose you, which has happened since then. Yeah,
that's a good lesson. Hey, Lisa, we're glad to have you. Lisa's in Atlanta. She is a faithful follower, and she's just got here late. But Lisa, this is a good one to re-listen to. Here's a challenge for you, Chris, because I've got it in my head, so I got to say it out loud. With a sphere like yours, I'm hoping that there is you're a regular part of their thoughts, meaning you have some sort of a systematic way that you are getting them emails or phone calls or texts or pop-bys, letters, because I can just see if with the influence that you've had being a good human over time, if you are regularly still in their thoughts, like you're present in their thoughts, 20 is a cakewalk for you. You'll have to turn the business off, in my opinion, or refer it out once you get to 20. If Carrie would teach you how to incubate those people, and you would just be disciplined in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, have a database. I just read some stats this morning about how we are with our databases and how lackadaisical we are with it. And I'm not saying sales. I'm just saying show up. And you might be able to look at it from the perspective of helping more people. Like, there's probably people in your sphere that need your help that you don't even know it, unless you're very systematic about it. Are you systematic about contacting them?
I am, and to be completely honest about the CRM things, my big issue with, KV Core is that it started contacting my people saying it was me last year, and I don't like that at all.
Right.
I don't like sending the spam text, that kind of stuff. And so I will always make my calls outside of it because I don't like triggering its little systems and stuff like that. But I'm not going to call 5 people a day. I'm not going to do it. I know that. So what I do is I have it assign me 1 a day that I'm going to do. And I'm going to do that one. I want to call that one. I do write 2 notes a day. I still go old school and handwrite a note and send it out. And then I have my list of, your hot list, your warm list that I check every morning and that kind of stuff. But it is, I'm constantly checking in with my people. And yeah, obviously everybody I've ever met and worked with, obviously they're not in my database because that's just too many. But, I definitely try to, each month, everybody in my past clients is going to hear from me each month. And it could be just something as simple as, when a hurricane comes, that's a great time for me because I hit everybody up. Hey, checking on you, any issues, etc. When tax bill goes out, hey, let's check and make sure we're all at 4%, that kind of stuff. So I kind of have those already kind of pre-done. And it's just a great way to check in with people. And I try to.
It's value add. It's a value check in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then one of the blessings I have is my daughter is a really good little baker. And so I will just randomly show up and just bring them a couple cookies from my daughter's bakery. She's happy to do it because I put her little business card on there and everybody's happy because they got, some cookies or something like that. And, so that's kind of, the pop buys that I do are usually kind of like very personal like that. I'm not the guy that's going to send you when I first started, I did the big newsletter with all the little, forget-me-nots or whatever, all that kind of stuff. And that's just not really me. It's much more of a, hey, maybe here's a ticket to a local game or something like that. So
I stand corrected. There were 14 ways that he systematized his contacts to his database. So good for you. I love cookies. I'm just putting that out there. If you're looking for a way to care about me,
I got you.
And if she's got any cookies she's sampling that she doesn't know if they're good or not, I'm an expert on cookies. So
You just
keep me in mind. Let me see, Lisa. I got if I got it in my head, I got to say it out loud too. Yep, Lisa, we're a lot alike, I think. So, Chris, what was that? Oh, the whole KV Core thing. Let's call Tracy. I think you can toggle that off. I don't think that automatically does that now. I think you can toggle.
Yeah, I've toggled it off.
You turn that thing off, and then. Yeah, that makes sense because I don't think it makes sense really if we're talking about the way that you do business for you to do that anyway because it sounds like you're doing it. And I got a buddy, Harrison Rand is the same way. Like he remembers everything about everybody. Those are outliers though. For most of you listening, you're not like that. Most of you listening need a system unless you're doing as good a job as Chris is in contacting your people. And don't say, hey, I called one last month.
Well, now, and here's the thing. I use the system. I just don't make the calls from it. I don't text from it. So, I use it. But I just, like I said, I love the fact that it's got my people in there. It's got my information in there. And then it tells me, hey, today you're calling so-and-so. But it's always fussing at me because I don't call from it. So it says, you didn't call them. But yeah, I did.
Yeah, it wants to control. Tracy's down in Charleston right now learning about KV Core. She's in a pretty intense class. Myrtle Beach Drone and Photo. Hey, thanks for being here. Like the cowboy hat. We appreciate you listening in. Anytime you want to throw questions out there, you do that. Hope you get some business from being on the show. Chris, this has been, you asked a little while ago, what in the world are we going to talk about? I mean, it's been gold mining since the minute we started talking because we're talking to a guy who has a very authentic business built around a lifetime of know, like, and trust that you've built, and you're just simply reaping the benefits of being a good human being by being blessed with the opportunity to list or sell their home. That's all this is for you. And I love it. Like, I just love that you're sitting there receiving it all. Now, we talked a couple of days ago. I don't want to make it all roses. It's frustrating sometimes, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it is. But, one thing I like about our company is that, y'all are much more about how can we help you as an agent have the lifestyle that you want to have and live the life you want to have. And we're not constantly having meetings about, profitability of the company. I worked for a company one time where it seemed like that's what every sales meeting, weekly sales meeting, was being discussed. And I'm sitting here looking at some, and this was during kind of a tough time. And I'm looking at some of these agents going, they're worried about how they're going to feed their kids. And you're talking to us about the profitability of the company. And that doesn't really match up. It wasn't, you could tell that company didn't necessarily value you as a person. They valued the bottom line. Whereas our company much more fits kind of my personality, where it's about the people involved. It's the people. And so I appreciate that.
No, and I'm proud for you to say that, because you're a great. I've learned so much. Well, you and I didn't know each other that well. This has been great for me to get to know you a little bit better. And I can see why you have repeat referral business. You're genuine. You're doing it for the right reasons. And you know what? I think those people that are running those meetings that way, that's all about company profit, just don't know any better. I don't think they have been shown the way that we do it. I think anybody that's shown it the way we do it, if that person was shown the way that we do it, they would probably change their ways, because they need to be doing it. That person that was leading that meeting needs to be doing it in such a way that they're living the life they want to live also. And I don't think they even think about that. I think they're driven by whether it's a corporate thing or whether it's something else. But for Mandy and I, we just didn't know any different when we started building it. We were like, we have to figure out how to live the life that we want to live. And it's only fair that we cheerlead for everyone else to do the same thing. So that's just how. Let me get these last two comments. I'm talking way too much. Sorry, I missed it. Will the system be shared with the viewers? Is there a PDF that can be sent out? Lisa, we'll talk about that. Maybe I can put you and Chris on the phone together, and y'all can talk it through. I don't know if there's a PDF or not. He mentioned it. I'm sure there is. He's probably going to teach a class for us. Maybe we record it and shoot it to you. But Chris, if you're okay with it, tell us your contact information so Lisa maybe can reach out to you.
Sure. It's Chris at collinscoastalsc.com. Like I said, you can put it in the notes or whatever, but it's just, so that's not a problem. Or by cell, you can just give me a call, 843-270-7143. And just call the Summerville office. So
Chris at collinscoastal.com.
At collinscoastalsc.com. Because there's a Collins Coastal guy out in California, so I had to stick the SC on there.
Perfect. The nerve.
Well, he was first, so
yeah, true. Well, there you have it. There you have. Well, Chris, thank you for just being yourself on the show today, having the courage to say yes and come on. And we do have a call at 11:15, so don't forget that one. It'll be totally different, but it'll be still in line. Vince, you got any closing thoughts for us before we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate you, Chris. You're a true advocate for what we stand for, and we're better because you're here, man.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. And like I said, I really appreciate the culture of our group. So thank y'all very much.
I'll be down there Wednesday. Hope I get to see you.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Rise Up Nation. We'll catch you next time.